Friday, it's Brunch with Bernie, the man I think of as America's senator, although having lived in Vermont, I know Vermonters very much are proud of the fact that he's their senator, too. And Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us for our national town hall meeting. We've been doing this for years and years and years now. Bernie, welcome back.
Good to be with you, Tom.
Great to have you here with us. I'm curious, a couple of things. Number one, your thoughts on this Pew poll that just came out on where Americans are at, basically. And secondly, how's the constitutional amendment going? And I'm sure there's a few other things that you'd like to get into here before we start taking calls.
Well, absolutely. Well, what the Pew poll tells us, Tom, is that people are becoming more cognizant of the reality that money plays in politics in America, and more aware of the immorality and bad economic impact that the unfair distribution of wealth and income in this country is having. What Pew tells us is that people now understand that there's something wrong when you have something like 400 wealthy individuals owning more wealth than the bottom half of America. I mean, that is just an extraordinary gap between the people on top and everybody else. And what the Pew poll also talks about is Wall Street and an understanding that in many ways what Wall Street is doing is actually harming the economy rather than helping the economy.
And people have figured it out.
And people are catching on. And I think I would credit the Occupy Wall Street movement for going a long way in educating the American people about the role of Wall Street, about the growing inequality in America in terms of wealth and income, about the decline of the middle class, the increase in poverty. Before we can go forward, the American people have got to understand what's going on, and that is we are losing our middle class, and if we don't get our act together, this country is evolving into an oligarchy where a very few people on top have incredible wealth, incredible economic and political power, which takes us to another issue that we're going to be working very hard on and where we need the help of people all over this country. What I see is one of the great political fights of our time, and that is getting corporate money out of politics. I think, Tom, many of our listeners know that 2 years ago, in an absolutely disastrous Supreme Court decision, a 5-4 decision, which in my view will go down in history as one of the worst Supreme Court decisions ever, the Supreme Court came up with a brilliant conclusion that corporations are people. Corporations like ExxonMobil and Bank of America and Goldman Sachs, they're just ordinary folks like you and me entitled to First Amendment constitutional rights, and that in the real world, the implication of that is that these guys can go into their corporate treasuries, take out tens and tens of millions of dollars, sit in a room with other corporations, and decide which candidates to support and oppose all over the country, and do this without disclosure. They could set up phony organizations so nobody knows who's funding these radio and television ads. To my mind, that is a very serious attack on the whole fabric of American democracy. You know, in a few weeks in Vermont, we have what we call March meeting. It's town meetings. And all over the state, people come together, and you may have 100 people coming out, and they talk about how much you spend on the school budget, how much you spend on the town budget. One person, one vote. What this is about, what Citizens United is about, is Karl Rove, the Koch brothers, sitting in rooms, quietly deciding who's going to get elected, who's not, spending huge amounts of money. So what we have introduced, and Ted Deutsch in the House introduced the same piece of legislation, is a constitutional amendment to basically say corporations are not people, that of course the Congress and state legislatures have a right to regulate campaign spending, and that corporations cannot spend money on campaigns. This is a huge, huge issue, because if we're going to tackle the economy, if we're going to create the kinds of millions of jobs that we desperately need, if we're going to deal with health care in a sensible way, universal health care, if we're going to cut military spending, if we're going to take on the very powerful special interests who today have so much weight over what goes on here in Washington and state legislatures, we're going to need to get a handle on that. And I would tell the listeners, urge the listeners, this is going to be a long fight. It's not going to, end tomorrow. We have a petition up on our website, sanders.senate.gov, and that petition is gaining a whole lot of names right now. But we have got to strategize and figure out how we educate, how we organize, how we win this victory, which, by the way, Tom, will have support not just from progressives. You got a lot of conservatives, you got a lot of independents out there who feel the same way. Corporations are not people. They should not be able to dominate the political process.
Right. And money is not speech. Absolutely. The thoughts on the defense bill and the Postal Service? I mean, there's a lot of legislative stuff going on right now.
This is the end of the first year of the session, so a lot of stuff is moving pretty quickly. I voted against the defense authorization bill for two reasons. Number one, I am concerned about the civil liberties implication of that bill, the doing away with due process for American citizens, and that's one reason. The second reason, which has not gotten a whole lot of discussion, is thank God the war in Iraq is winding down. We're bringing our troops home. That is a good thing. But there has been very little discussion about the size of the military budget. And this is the authorization bill, not the appropriations bill. But given the fact that we have tripled military spending since 1997, given the fact that we now as a nation spend more on defense than the rest of the world combined, I think we got to take a very hard look at military spending, do away with weapon systems that are no longer relevant to today's world. And when we talk about deficit reduction, it means not just, as my Republican colleagues want to do, cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare, cutting Medicaid. Let's take a hard look at military spending. So I voted against that for those reasons. In terms of the Postal Service, the Post Office, Postal Service leadership has plans which would eliminate about 100,000 jobs in the middle of a recession, would close down rural post offices all over America, close down processing plants, slow mail delivery. I think that those are bad ideas. Working with some other senators, what we managed to do is get a reprieve for the next 5 months to prevent closings and give the Congress the time to come up with ideas for a comprehensive postal reform bill, which will strengthen the Postal Service. Everybody knows that the Postal Service has to change. We're all aware of the digital revolution. We know that first-class mail has gone down, email is going up. But I believe there are ways to strengthen the Postal Service, give them more flexibility, deal with some accounting problems that they have with the federal government where they're overpaying, so that we can make our Postal Service, which is just enormously important, especially in rural America, give them the opportunity to be a robust and vibrant institution in the 21st century. So those are a few of the issues we've been working on this week.
Yeah, this is Ben Franklin's invention, or not invention. I mean, there have been post offices around for a long time before the United States was here, but it was his baby, and it's the second largest employer in America, the largest unionized employer in America, which I believe is why the Republicans put it in their crosshairs.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons, but I want people, and if people have ideas, we'd love to hear them. One of the things you got is every single day we have letter carriers who are delivering mail to 160,000 doors in America. We have post offices all over America. How do we give the post office the flexibility to expand what they're doing, to become more entrepreneurial, to be a better service to the American people than they are right now? Those are one of the issues that we're going to have to tackle.
And a great one. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie Hour, National Town Hall meeting. Your calls for the Senator up next. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie Hour. And Chetty, if I'm pronouncing that right, in San Bernardino, California, watching us on Free Speech TV. You are on the air with Senator Bernie Sanders.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I wanted to know, when the Europeans came here to America, they wanted to make a free society where everybody was free, right?
Oh, in theory.
So what I know why? Yeah. So what I know, why are the oligarchs taking over? And what are you going to do to stop it? Or what are the people going to do to stop it? Or it's going to be the same, what do you call it, plutocratic society that was being operating back in the 18th century. That's the same thing they're bringing back today.
So,
well, if I got the question right, Tom,
I think what he was saying is that we're seeing a return of the Gilded Age, the railroad baron oligarchs of the 19th century, or maybe 18th century, the oligarchs of that time. And what are we going to do to stop the oligarchs?
Well, Chetty, I think you asked the $64 question. That is the most important political issue that we have to deal with. Let me set the stage by telling you very clearly that we now have a right-wing extremist Congress. And it is very clear, and I will give them credit for being honest about it. They do want to return this country back to the Gilded Age, back to the 1920s, where working families had very little protection, very little security. Let me give you some examples. There are many of these guys who, in one way or another, want to destroy Social Security because they don't believe philosophically that the government should be involved in providing retirement security for the American people. Philosophically, they don't think government should be involved. They want to destroy Social Security. If you want retirement benefits, you negotiate with Wall Street. That is their view. These guys are very clear that they hate government health care, want to repeal that. Many of them would like to end Medicare or at least voucherize Medicare. They don't believe that our seniors should have a guaranteed health care program, i.e. Medicare, which provides health care to them. They want to kill that. Medicaid, which provides health care to poor people, would like to substantially cut funding for that. In terms of federal aid to education, some of these guys want to destroy and end the Federal Department of Education. In terms of environmental protection, to make sure that the air we breathe, the food that we eat, the water that we drink is safe. They want to destroy those agencies and the regulations which prevent corporations from polluting our air, our land, our food, and so forth. So, Chetty, your point is exactly right. That's what these guys want. They want to bring us back to a time when you had a small number of very wealthy people controlling the economic and political process. And right now, as we speak, there is a horrendous effort on the part of right-wing governors and legislators to make it more difficult for low-income people, senior citizens to even vote. So on one hand, they have decided that corporations like ExxonMobil are people, can spend unlimited money on campaigns. On the other hand, they want poor people and older people not to be able to vote. That's the direction they want to go. We can talk about how we try to stop that.
Yeah, and I think one solution to that is your constitutional amendment, which people can read over at sanders.senate.gov and sign off on it. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls. Check out his website, sanders.senate.gov.
Kalikimaka is a wise way to say Merry Christmas. A very Merry Christmas. A very, very Merry
Well, happy
Christmas.
holidays to you. It's that time of the year. Welcome back to Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. Check out his website at sanders.senate.gov. And Bernie Cece in Pagosa Springs, Colorado is on the line with you. Cece,
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. I have a question for both of you. I don't see how it's possible that Occupies with posters and petitions online are going to get control of this oligarchy. They've been in power for quite a long time. We have not been a democracy for quite a long time, at least for the last 30 years. How is it possible with a couple of signs and marching and petitions we're going to overcome people who have a charge of our armies, our military, our laws, everything? How is this possible?
Well, Cece, I don't think a petition is going to solve all of our problems. You're quite right. Among other things, to pass a constitutional amendment, we're going to have to get that bill through the House. You're going to have to get it through the Senate. You're going to have to get it through 3/4 of the states. And that's going to take an enormous effort. Political change, real political change, does not come easy. So please do not hear me to say, hey, sign this petition, which I want everybody to sign, and that's going to solve all our problems. What we are talking about, and Chetty raised that issue in the first question, is how you build a movement of tens of millions of people which demands that the United States government starts representing ordinary people, the middle class, working families, the vast majority of our people, rather than the top 1% who today have enormous power. And what I would just simply say to you is this is not easy stuff. This requires grassroots organizing. It requires a whole lot of education, which is why the work that people like Thom Hartmann and our other progressive radio hosts and television hosts do are very, very important. But so that you don't get too pessimistic, Cece, let me just tell you this. We have groups out there like Working America who are knocking on doors all over this country. Do not forget that just a month and a half ago or so, in the state of Ohio, the grassroots of that state, the working class of the state, won a major victory against right-wing extremism. Before that, what we are also seeing a growing Occupy Wall Street movement where more and more people are understanding the class dynamics of American society. So I would say to you that it is a very long, hard struggle that the people on top not only have great economic power, these are the people who have shipped millions of jobs to China. These are the people who are outsourcing and downsizing. They have great political power. We have got to deal with Wall Street. None of this stuff is easy. But as Tom and I often say, you just can't throw in the towel. Despair is not an option. The stakes are too high. So we got to be smart. We got to educate. We got to organize. And we have got to elect people who are going to stand up for the middle class.
There you go. Mark in San Francisco, listening on Green 960. Mark, you are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Morning, gentlemen. I wanted to bring up the fact that I think the biggest assault against democracy right now and fairness is this pledge with Grover Norquist and all these pledgees that have turned their back on America and destroying the middle class. To me, this is the biggest assault we're facing at the moment. We run into it every time we want revenue increase or anything for the middle class. It's Grover Norquist who's running Congress. It's got to be destroyed.
Well, what Mark is talking about, which is absolutely true, is that many Republicans in the Senate and in the House have taken a pledge. And their pledge is that come hell or high water, they will not raise taxes. But what they will do in order to deal with the deficit, which they helped cause by waging two wars that were unfunded, by giving huge tax breaks to the wealthiest people in this country, by passing a Medicare Part D program, which does not allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices much more expensive than it has to be, and most importantly, by deregulating Wall Street, which caused the recession and the unemployment and the loss of small businesses and the decline in revenue. Those are the causes of the deficit. And now what our Republican friends say, no, we're not going to ask the wealthiest people in this country to pay more in taxes. No, we are religiously almost opposed to doing that. Yes, the top 1% earn more than the bottom 50%. Yes, the effective tax rate, the real tax rate that the very rich pay, is the lowest in decades. Yes, there are all kinds of loopholes that corporations benefit from, but we're not going to address those issues. What we want to do is cut programs, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, education, environmental protection, the needs of the children. That's what we want to do. And I think what Mark is saying is we got to take these people on. We are going to become an oligarchy if so few have so much. And the richest people in this country who are doing phenomenally well have got to be asked to pay more in taxes. No question about that. We have got to eliminate all kinds of loopholes that corporations currently benefit from, so that in some cases, these guys can make billions of dollars in a year, not pay a nickel in federal corporate taxes. So that is the struggle, and Mark is right.
Yeah, I just to that, we pulled together. I had a right-winger on the other day who said he was part of the top 1% and proud of it. And I said, oh, you have a wealth of $13,907,000? And he's like, well, no. And I'm like, you make over $380,000 a year? And he's like, well, almost. It's 200 and something. I said, sorry, you're not the 1%. I mean, people don't even understand, Bernie. It's you know, and it's like the top 1/10 of 1%. They have 50% of all capital gains income in the United States. I mean, it's startling. It's just absolutely startling. I mean, sorry to go off here. We just have about 15 seconds. didn't want to bring in another caller.
And the good news on this, I know, Cece called a moment ago a little bit depressed. The good news, I think, in the last year, we have made significant progress in having the American people understand just what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Our middle class is disappearing. The wealthy are doing phenomenally well. We have an incredibly unfair distribution of income and wealth.
Yeah, and that Pew poll is showing it. You're absolutely right. Senator Bernie Sanders with us, sanders.senate.gov, his website. It is our Brunch with Bernie. Our Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us, taking your calls in our National Town Hall meeting. Reginald in Houston, Texas, you are on the air with Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Hey, thank you, Tom, for taking me. And, this is the day, Time Magazine said this is the year they nominated the person of the year, the protester. And I look at that and I say, Bernie, Senator Sanders could be on there, yourself, Bradley Manning, and those type of individuals. Thank you for voting against that for eroding our civil liberties that are being eroded. And I fear that if they take away these civil liberties, will individuals like the protesters, will we be able to stand up and without going into this detention or be called an enemy combatant? And because we passed this Patriot Act, we didn't pay attention to that bill. We passed the thing after 9/11, we pay attention to that. It's just the same type of focus with this bill going through that's going to erode that. Well, people's voices like yourselves and the protesters and us, we will, and Bradley Manning, and that may be a test case to see how that's going. And thank you for everything, Senator Sanders.
Well, Reginald, thank you. And what Reginald is talking about, I think, is that since 9/11, in terms of the Patriot Act, which I strongly opposed, in terms of just the defense authorization bill passed yesterday, the government is taking power against the ability of people to stand up and dissent, and that could be very, very abusive. We live in a country where everybody is entitled to stand up and say what they believe, go out on the streets and protest. And in fact, in my view, we're not going to bring about the kinds of change that we want unless a lot of people are standing up and voicing their opinion and protesting. And Reginald is absolutely right. We have to be vigilant. We have to fight against these attacks on civil liberties.
Tim in Grand Rapids, Michigan. You're on the air with Senator Bernie Sanders.
Yes. Thanks for taking my call, Senator Sanders. In the state of Michigan, if you were lucky enough to retire at 55 like I have this year, our esteemed governor has laid out a tax plan where he's going to put a state tax on our pension, which we'd never had before. And if you were born after 1946, you get taxed from 1946 to 1952. You get a portion of this your taxed, and then after you're born from 52 on, you have a full tax on your pension. This is something that we never been able to vote on. He just jammed it down our throats. And starting January 1, we're going to start being taxed. Is this something that is going to catch wildfire across the nation and have all these Republicans that are running this state,
the governors,
and do that to somebody else?
Yes, I think it is, Tim. I mean, this is what you have. The country is in the midst of a major economic crisis caused by the greed and illegal behavior on Wall Street. As a result of declining revenue, increased health care costs, states all over the country, including Vermont, have serious financial problems. So the question is, how, as a nation, Congress, state legislatures, governors, what is the best way and the fairest way to address that issue? What some of us want to do here in Washington is to make sure that the wealthiest people in this country and large corporations pay their fair share of taxes. We want to make sensible cuts in military spending. We want to do away with corporate tax loopholes. That is a way to raise revenue in a way that protects the middle class. And then we can work with state governments to do the right thing. What the right wing wants to do is use the fiscal crisis as a means to attack benefits that working people have enjoyed for many, many decades. And you're talking of just one example. Here's a tax on pensions in Michigan. In other states, what it is, major cuts in Medicaid, throwing people, including children, off of Medicaid. In other states, it will be cutting back on programs for students or senior citizens. In California, for example, as a result of the financial crisis, we're seeing major cuts to what was once the best university system in the entire United States of America, one of the great systems in the world being decimated. So, yes, to answer your question, Tim, all over the country, we're seeing attacks against working people and the middle class, and that is exactly the issue that we've got to deal with here.
Barry in Portland, Oregon, listening on AM 620 KPOJ. Barry, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Oh, yes, Tom. Hi.
Hi, Barry.
Hi again. You're not in Portland anymore, but I am still.
Yeah, nice to hear your voice.
Yes. Well, the May 9th Nation magazine had something about this from 3 weeks before Paul Krugman's article, Let's Take a Hike, in the New York Times about what the Congressional Progressive Caucus developed. This is for Senator Sanders. The people's budget. There are 4 ways of taxation that are very, very good and adequate to bring in enough money for us, and then there's a single-payer health care clause to it. Mm-hmm. So, Senator Sanders, if you could tell me of the status of it, and then please help to get this before Congress and get people to vote for it.
Yeah, we've had Jan Schakowsky on several times about that, actually. Bernie?
Jan, who is the congresswoman from Illinois, is doing a great job.
Yeah.
Barry, back in 1991, when I was first elected to the Congress from Vermont, I helped form the Progressive Caucus, and I'm still a member of it, although I must confess not a very active member. But what the progressives have done is provided a significant alternative to not only the Ryan budget and the Republican budget, but also to mainstream Democratic budgets. And what they are saying is, yes, we want to deal with deficit reduction, but also we want to create the millions of jobs this country desperately needs. You can do those things if you're willing to take on special interests. So what the people's budget coming out of the Progressive Caucus talks about is progressive taxation, as I've been mentioning all afternoon. That is, ask the wealthiest people to start paying their fair share of taxes, doing away with the absurdity of the capital gains tax, which primarily benefits the richest of the rich and is now at 15%, doing away with the loopholes that corporations now benefit from, taking a hard look at military spending, investing some of that money back into rebuilding our infrastructure. And when you do that, you make America stronger, and you create, over a period of time, millions of good-paying jobs, rebuilding roads, water systems, broadband, schools, and so forth. Transforming our energy system so we don't spend $350 billion a year importing oil from Saudi Arabia and other countries, but invest that in energy efficiency, sustainable energy. In my state, Vermont, we're leading the country, helping to lead the country in energy efficiency. And yet, despite that, we have a long way to go. Many of our homes can see 30, 40, 50% reduction in their fuel use if they were effectively weatherized. Sustainable energy is growing, but not fast enough. So I think in terms of wind, solar, right now in Texas, not widely known, Texas now is producing 10,000 megawatts of electricity from wind. That's the equivalent of 10 nuclear power plants. We could be expanding that all over the country. Solar is growing. We're creating jobs in solar. More solar installations are being put on right now than ever before because solar costs are going down. Price of solar panels is declining significantly. So what the people's budget is essentially saying is, yes, we can deal with deficit reduction without attacking the safety net that is life and death for tens of millions of Americans. Yes, we can create the jobs that we need, but to do that, we have got to be prepared to stand up to Wall Street, corporate America, the military-industrial complex. And I'm proud to be a member of the Progressive Caucus, and I think Jan Schakowsky and others are doing a great job.
Okay. Sophia in Maysville, Kentucky. Sophia, we have just a minute to the break. If you have a quick question, or maybe you can ask your question and Bernie can answer it after the break.
Sure. I'm sorry, I'm out of breath. I had to run up some stairs. We have one chance to get the amendment right, and while Citizens United became law a few years ago, I'm just concerned. Sorry, I had an emergency upstairs. Maybe can I come back after the break so I can catch my breath?
Yeah, sure. That's fine. Sophia, Bernie, you want to talk about your amendment?
Yeah, we'll hear what Sophia's question is later.
Yeah.
But if Sophia is talking about campaign finance reform, there are a number of approaches. I think getting corporate money out, which is what our constitutional amendment does, is very important. But we also have to talk about public funding of elections. It's not good enough simply to go back to where we were before Citizens United. We need to, in a significant way, take money out of politics, move toward public funding of elections so that candidates are worrying about the issues rather than hustling money all of the time.
Absolutely. Senator Bernie Sanders with us, sanders.senate.gov, if you want to see that and sign up for it as a supporter of that constitutional amendment that Bernie's talking about. Okay, welcome back. And I think Sophia has vanished, right? Apparently. Okay, so Archie in Yucca Valley, California. Archie, you are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Oh, Tom, the man that keeps the fires burning in my mind and my American patriot hero in the clouds of Washington. Oh, what a treat. Anyhow, I'm going to be real quick. Percentages, if you operate with them, don't lie. From the top down, right down to the family where the brass tacks of percentage budgeting works. You know what we have to do? We have to institute for the world a financial transaction tax. I don't care what you call it. I don't care what the percentage is. But these computers that run these very high volume trades, I call it skimming. And I know a lot of people that their pension, you know, all these investments that are dumped into the market, they're going down, but they're still pulling off these big profits for these people. And those markets are for the people. But if the top 1% are getting 40 or 50% of the capital gains, which have been stripped down, and Warren Buffett made it so clear. Now I'm going to
Archie, if I can summarize, because we only have 4 minutes during this break, and we're more than halfway through that. For Bernie, this is financial transaction taxes.
Absolutely.
Bernie, you've been at the forefront of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we heard a moment ago from Barry about the people's budget. This is not only a way to raise revenue. This is a small fee on stock transactions. Not only is it a way to raise revenue in a progressive way, you can design it so that it is progressive, but it also will tamper down speculation. Archie is talking about high-speed financial transactions where you have these incredibly powerful computers buying and selling just an enormous amount of stuff in a very short period of time. And if they can make a margin of a fraction of a penny, they will make a fortune. All of this gets back to the point that to a very significant degree, what Wall Street is about is a gambling operation designed to make money in ways like that rather than investing in the productive economy. What banking was supposed to be, and still is, say in my state of Vermont, you talk to the bankers and they say, yeah, people come in, they need a mortgage. We talk to them, we find out whether they can, in fact, pay the mortgage, and we lend them money. We talk to small businesses who come in, they need some help. That's what banking is supposed to be, to invest in the productive economy, to help businesses grow, to create jobs, to help people who can afford it buy homes, not to be a gambling casino. We are involved in these high-speed financial transactions which provide nothing productive to the world. But that is a major, major issue which leads to the whole other issue of real Wall Street reform, the need to break up the large financial institutions, real Federal Reserve reform, And we are working on that. I mean, it's going to be a huge fight, you know. I mean, Wall Street is the most powerful entity in the world. But we need some discussion in that, and I agree with what Archie had to say.
Yeah, and I honor you for being one of the leaders in the United States Senate of that discussion and of that battle. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. You can check out his constitutional amendment and also his newsletter, it's Vermont Buzz, Bernie? Yeah, we'll be right back.
God bless all of you who fight our battles on this Christmas Eve. God bless us all. Keep us strong in our faith that we fight for a better day for humankind, here and everywhere.
I could listen to FDR all day long. Welcome back. And modern day FDR, Senator Bernie Sanders is with us. Our Brunch with Bernie hour. Bernie, I asked you, I've been calling your newsletter the Bernie Buzz for a long time, and I think it has a slightly different name, doesn't it?
No, that's what it is. It's the Bernie Buzz.
The Bernie Buzz, okay.
We have two editions. One goes just to Vermont, one goes to Vermont and the rest of the country.
Okay, I saw one the other day, and it was like I thought I said the Vermont Buzz, and I thought, wait a minute, have I been getting this wrong all the time? Because when I lived in Vermont. Anyway, Bill in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and you can get Bernie's newsletter over at sanders.senate.gov. Bill in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, you are on the air with Senator Bernie Sanders.
Hey, Tom, thanks. Love your show.
Thank you.
Senator Sanders, two things. I know you hate hearing this, but boy, I sure wish you'd run for president. So I know your position on that. But secondly, I think the Occupy Wall Street movement is the most exciting thing that's happened in my lifetime. I'm real involved in it, and I just want your opinion. Really, pretty much just say to the people that, I mean, I call me naive, but I think that this movement has the opportunity to change America.
Well, Bill, I agree with you. And here's what's got to happen. I think just a couple of thoughts come to my mind. Sometimes people get pessimistic, and I understandably so, about what's going on in this country. God only knows. But when we recall the history of our country, when we recall the fight for civil rights, the fight for women's rights, the fight for environmental protection, things don't happen overnight. I think what Occupy Wall Street has done, which has struck a nerve, is saying, look, we have got to focus on the economic reality of America. Who has the wealth? Is it really, as we read in the papers, evenly distributed? Is the United States a middle-class country? Does everybody in America have all of the opportunity to go to school, to get the health care they need? And when American people begin to think about it and get some information on it, they understand that is not the case. In fact, we have the most unequal distribution of income in wealth of any major country on earth. And social mobility, the ability to move up, is becoming harder and harder. Occupy Wall Street has raised that issue. Occupy Wall Street has obviously raised the issue of Wall Street. And Tom and I could have 50 programs day after day and not even have enough time to go into all of the implications of what that means. What does it mean when 6 financial institutions, 6, have assets the equivalent of 2/3 of the GDP of the United States of America, over $9 trillion? What does that mean to our country, both in terms of too big to fail? Are we going to have to bail these babies out again? Probably. And concentration of ownership. What does it mean when the major banks, handful of banks, control 2/3, produce 2/3 of the credit cards in this country, and are charging people 25 or 30% interest rates, control millions of mortgages in this country? So then you get to the Fed, and we had a very important amendment placed in the Dodd-Frank bill, which gave us some insight, gave us an audit of the Fed during the financial crisis. And what we learned is that trillions of dollars were being lent out to every financial institution in this country, central banks all over the world, at very low interest rates, wealthy individuals. We never knew that. What does it mean that they could bail out large banks, and yet can't bail out small businesses, help people who are struggling with their mortgages. What is the function of the Fed? Should it be more active, as I think it should be, in creating jobs in America rather than just protecting Wall Street? So what Occupy Wall Street has done, and I think Bill makes this point, is begin to focus attention on some of the major economic issues. And this is tough stuff, though. This is not even getting women's rights, getting civil rights, rights for African Americans, Hispanics. All that is very difficult. This is much harder because this time you're taking on all of the big money interest in this country. So I agree with Bill. I think Occupy Wall Street has been very important. But now I think its demonstrations are great, but now we got to convert those ideas, that activity, into political activity. How do we elect people who are going to stand up and are prepared to take on Wall Street and the big money interest, protect Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, fight for working families, stop a disastrous trade policy, which has cost us millions of jobs as companies outsource to China, etc. So that's where Occupy Wall Street is the thinking about how we expand, how they expand what they're doing into political activity.
And doesn't this mean, Bernie, we have just a minute here to wrap up this hour. Doesn't this mean people showing up at, showing up in movement politics, but also in party politics? I realize you're not a member of the Democratic Party, but for example, volunteering to be committee chairpersons or precinct persons.
Absolutely. It means, Tom, getting involved in every level of government. And the truth of the matter is, and we learned this from the Tea Party, that a relatively, compared to our population, small number of people can have a profound impact on the Republican Party. Tea Party has taken the Republicans very far to the right. Can progressives do the same, among other things, to the Democratic Party? Can independents run in states where that opportunity lends itself? But your point is well taken. It means getting involved in the business of political democracy.
Yeah, it's not enough to just vote.
Right.
And in fact, the day of voting that's the day when the work begins, not when it ends, isn't it?
Yep.
It's and so anyway, this is at the risk of devolving into slogans, but this is really where the rubber meets the road.
Look, I understand as well as anybody how tough and frustrating this is, but as you and I have pointed out, as most people understand, we are fighting not for ourselves, but for our kids, for the future of this country, and in fact, for the future of the planet. And people have got to be involved. There is no other option.
Absolutely. Senator Bernie Sanders, thanks so much for being with us, Bernie.
My pleasure.
Check out sanders.senate.gov. Sign Bernie's resolution or his amendment and sign up for his newsletter.